Welcome to the first of our Mobile Mobility shows, and I'm delighted to be sitting down today talking to Jason Turner from Entanglement, who's kindly given some time to talk to me about the mega trends that are affecting the mobility world. Okay, I'm sitting down today with Jason Turner, CEO of Entanglement. Jason, thanks for making time for us and coming together to share some of our thoughts around mobility. You and I have been working together for a while now, and we've been looking at trends in the industry and sharing some different ideas. So I kind of just wanted to sit down and really collect some of those thoughts and maybe share them with some other people and like-minded people or other people that maybe haven't thought that topic through. And I'd really sort of frame that around the things that are the mega trends that we see are affecting mobility, and especially with the world that's affected by COVID and the current pandemic, because there's a lot of people questioning whether those mega trends are going to change, whether they're affected in a way that stops the move towards mobility, or whether mobility is something that directionally continues. So yeah, I kind of welcome your thoughts as always, and just want to share them. So let's kick off. I'll break this down into three areas. Let's start off with consciousness. You know, what's the consciousness of the consumer and the customer experience we're driving? Do you have any thoughts around that in terms of how that's shaping, or how maybe COVID has affected that?
I think people are really adapting and changing quickly to a level of awareness and mobility. If you think of, not just Uber, right? Like, or Airbnb, or kind of like the this kind of a whole new economy that's been created out of things that we have. Now with COVID, we're relying on things to be delivered. So I think it's accelerating. It's accelerating the delivery of our regular everyday goods, where we could go to the store. Now we're not necessarily going out as much. And so I think there's a overall consciousness and awareness of people to how the technology can really help them and bring benefits to their life every day.
Yeah, I think you make some great points there. And I think that experience of being locked down and being forced to think about how you bring things to you rather than you go and collect them yourself. Suddenly we're expecting things to be brought to the cave rather than be the hunters and gatherers that goes and collects it in a traditional way. And I guess that, to some people, that makes people think about mobility being about the physical movement of the persons, but actually it's really about the movement of goods and services, and it's the experience that you need to drive from a mobility orientated enterprise, I guess.
Absolutely, and we're seeing that. I'm in New York City, and in big, densely populated cities, that's what you live off of. Everything's delivered, right?
Yeah.
Now I think that's expanding out into the suburbs, and it's accelerated at a really great pace.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of the interesting thing, because I observe the industry as being a world where it was being driven a lot by the auto industry, to be fair, in terms of mobility, because it just seemed like a natural extension of that world to start thinking about the move away from ownership towards a more of a service-orientated world of mobility. But now I think what COVID has really sharply brought to light, and the new normal that we all talk about, is really that we are now experiencing the consumer driving change. So rather than the industry keeping pace with what the change is, the consumer's now starting to question, why do I want to own the car? Why do I want to own two cars in a household where both of us are working from home? And even, why do I want to pay for that lease agreement on a vehicle while I've been furloughed from work? And so kind of, I think, is starting to change people's evaluation of the important things in life, and whether physical ownership versus a service is the change.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And even a step further, like, think of the way cars are being manufactured, and as autonomous kind of takes hold, like the concept of being in a car without a steering wheel, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? I don't know. It takes a lot of adjusting, but I think people are ready, like, for these big changes, and it's a really interesting time. And look at how we're meeting today. You know, it's so many people are just working from home. Our whole lives have been tipped upside down, and we've had to rely on technology to get us through it and to stay productive and connected, and to keep moving forward with things. And it's really great to see.
And I always think that's kind of the interesting thing, because again, if you look at the topic of mobility, and people very quickly coined the phrase of mobility as a service or smart mobility. And I remember sitting down with some OEM clients, and I kind of suggested to them that moving to mobility is a one-directional journey, because once you become established as a mobility as a service provider in an ecosystem helping to move people and goods and other things, you're really on a path towards intelligent mobility, because the ultimate goal of mobility is to remove the need for people to move. I mean, you literally start to service needs in the way that we're doing now. And again, I think COVID's pushed that on, and with what was already in the world of people being more aware of the environment and the impact on the environment, we really have a conscious now, which is really quite well educated on topics that previously maybe they weren't. And so the traditional world of planned obsolescence marketing that drives us to want to buy something is now being replaced with a very conscious decision born of a way more intellectual view of what people want, as opposed to what they're made to feel that they want by a marketing push.
That's true. And you brought up a great point about intelligence to all of these services, right? Like, people are going to want to feel connected. They want to feel the personalization. And the more that can happen, and I think it's going to make the transition and the ease much easier, because people will just be used to getting into their own car, even if it isn't their own car that they own. They're paying for it as they go.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And you kind of bring up the word connectivity, and in the view that we have, the consciousness is one pillar of mobility. Another big one is, of course, is connectivity and what technology enablement brings. And I remember you and I were talking before about the city landscape and how you start to think about the different roles different types of compute power will have, and around the emergence of truly smart cities. I wonder if you want to kind of share with us your thoughts around how supercomputing and things come together in an intelligent stack to actually drive that value.
That's great. I think with connectivity, there's so much data being generated today. Everybody's talking about telematics, IoT sensors, and smart cities, monitoring power grids, right? People movement, traffic lights, cameras, video, and then automating the intelligence of what's being generated digitally is very, very challenging. You can't scale that today with existing computers, right? Like, it's brute force. So you have the bandwidth issues, you got just the raw CPU power, GPU, like accelerators. So I think finding the right combination of computing that can really optimize and work in tandem is important, because you have the edge sensors, right, that are putting intelligence at the edge, but you need the brain, right? And if you think of municipalities, they want to be able to look into what's happening at any given point in time, and that takes a special skill set, special set of expertise, and special equipment. So it's one thing to have the bandwidth. It's the next thing to have regional infrastructure to manage it all.
Yeah, and I just wonder whether the different various cities around the world and the different stakeholders have really kind of bought into and understood the enormity of the challenge, but also the opportunity that's going to come with this connectivity and this move.
Well, I used to make fun of people monitoring elevators. Is a lot of this data necessary? And I think we're going to go through, and I think that's a huge opportunity, is building AI that really filters through what's valuable, what's not valuable, and
Yeah.
applying that through the whole chain, because storage is a huge issue. Think of like just the entire infrastructure needed, the amount of data you're transmitting, what you want to capture. Video is another aspect. What can be done at the edge versus the cloud? Do you have to store all of the video, or you just need what's important? So I think understanding how everything is connected and almost applying how we think to it, like the human aspect, I'll tie your two words together, tie consciousness and connectivity together with a broad set of technology that keeps us all connected and informed. And that's the whole point, is how can cities stay informed, make better decisions, and ultimately give us as humans a better quality of life.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and that's the important thing. It's give humans a better quality of life. It starts with the customer experience. It starts with what value you can create. And I think so many times people get lost in the technology and the opportunity of connectivity and the things, the art of the possible that technology can achieve. And to your point, you end up generating lots of new data. You end up generating lots of opportunities, but you actually lose sight of what's important, what value you're creating for that customer experience, and then what new business models will spawn from that, and what technology then enables it. So the enablement is the leverage of the technology as opposed to the thing that forms your thinking. And I think there's a lot of people get confused about that. The term digital transformation for a lot of people is about new technology. But for me, especially in the world of mobility, it's really about transforming the way people embrace technology to live their lives, and the way technology enables new customer experience opportunities. So it's kind of interesting, and I kind of like. There's a lot of people kind of picked up, especially in the auto industry, I think, the phrase of data is the new oil, and I've long been a believer that whoever invented that term came from the auto industry, because it's like a comfort blanket. If we say data is like the new oil, we can say that mobility is all about the auto industry, as opposed to it's something else, because it truly is something else. And again, that kind of brings me on to the third one of our three C's that we talked about. So we've done consciousness, we've done connectivity, and the last one is really convergence. So I get asked a lot, what is mobility? I own mobility as the Mobility DX for Fujitsu, and people say, okay, what is mobility? What is your mobility offerings? And it's an interesting question, because I see mobility as a new sector. I see it as a new industry environment, which is a formation of convergence between traditional sectors that have either woken up to the fact that there's a new way of resolving that customer experience model, or they're going to wake up to it when they get disrupted. And I don't know if you've got some thoughts in terms of convergence and where you see that coming to reality.
I think convergence is such a powerful word, right? And I think that's exactly it. You have to bring this intelligence, or this layer on top of things that your connectivity, right? Your consciousness, how we behave, your personalization. It can be even like, what do you want to read? Like years ago, there are people working on simple things of bookmarking a video. So when you watch it on one device, take it, get off a plane, get on your boat, you can pick up and watch the same basketball game, right? So think of what had to happen to just create that. And we take all of that for granted today. The same thing is happening in this convergence of mobility, where you have massive amounts of technology that has been developed over many, many years, still being developed, and we're able to utilize that and benefit from it every day today. So to your point, industries are really going to be changing. It's almost like the AI, when you talk about artificial intelligence, and people will parallel that to the internet. Like, you had to get your business online. If you didn't, you were left behind. And I think you're going to see the same thing with mobility and convergence. If you're not on board, you're literally going to be left behind.
Yeah.
You know, it's fast moving, and it's very, very powerful. I think what we're seeing is extremely powerful.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of interesting. You look at even I've talked to some large cities around the world about their different responses to mobility, and some of them sort of get quite excited by the fact. I had one city that told me that they'd managed the dockless bike problem, because suddenly there was dockless bikes in their city, and so they managed that problem. And I said, it's interesting you choose to call it a problem. You know, is it a problem or is it an opportunity? And is that someone investing in your city because they see value in your city? And is that an enablement for the customer experience model of your citizens? And does that enrich what can be possible? And does that change the consciousness? And does that play to people's consciousness? Is that an environmentally friendly thing to do? So where you're seeing it as a problem, maybe it's actually quite the opposite. And managing that problem, maybe is that really embracing what mobility could achieve for your city? And so we had this really interesting discussion around that, and I kind of think that's part of the problem. If disruption happens to you, your response to that typically is to try and manage the situation. If you actually are on the front foot and are helping to create that disruption, helping to create that new opportunity, then you have a different mindset. And I kind of think, you know, public sector is one particular world where that thinking has to change, and I think those opportunities will then exist.
Well, that's it. You have to rethink, you know, everything. You know, how do you apply things, and to do that takes a lot. Typically people don't like change, right? So going back to making things easier, I think if technology makes things easier and demonstrates the ease or convenience or enhances capabilities, that convergence is really going to be accelerated. But people do have to reframe the problem. To your point, like, how is it a problem? Is it an opportunity? I look at it as an opportunity, obviously, you know, and you know, and it all goes back. I mean, to, you know, we didn't touch on security, right? Like, can mobility be hacked? What is connectivity? You know, and that goes to the core of, even think of manufacturers today and manufacturing. Are they thinking about the types of security? Like, when you make something physical, you're stuck with that for a while, right? So if you think 10, 14 years, when you have to, the things that you have to support, how is that going to be affected with the advances in computing and AI and security? You know, so I think we have to be forward thinking and not be afraid to be forward thinking. You know, and really start embracing some of these newer technologies at a more rapid pace, and not to take things that are necessarily bleeding edge, but things that are stable and you can implement and maybe integrate in a different way. Hence the convergence. I think it's this integration that's happening. You know.
Like, I guess it's a timing thing as well, isn't it? Because I mean, your company Entanglement, it really deals in you know, new technology, new concepts, new ways of looking at the world. You know, AI, quantum inspired, quantum computing. Yeah, you're really at the sharp end of technology changing the world. But at the same time, you've got customers that are working with you in the now. You know, I like to look at the world as a now, near, far landscape, and you know, the now is the transactional necessity of today, the near being the transformational opportunities, and the far being the ecosystems that we've been talking about, we want to be part of. Now, quite often I talk to people and you start talking about mobility, and they straight away fall into the same space they do with things like quantum, which is, yeah, that's just kind of somewhere off in the future and not for me to worry about right now. And you know, I'm just going to concentrate on the world today. How do you kind of reframe that conversation with your customers to get them thinking a little bit differently and getting the time frames working in a more logical way?
I think that's been the bulk of our challenge with Entanglement since we started, is early on, it was all about quantum. I was like, oh, this is great. The capabilities are going to be amazing. Like, it's just a sexy topic, right? And I thought everyone would be like jumping on board. This is really exciting. And then you peel it back a little bit more, and to your point, it is farther out. So I think you have to create environments where you can embrace the R&D, but also create bridges. So I see what we're doing today is creating bridges with computation. So you can give people advanced capabilities that they don't have today. And then that creates a bridge as other technologies mature and come online. You just plug them in and port them over, if you will. But it gets people thinking differently. And I think that's, again, that's a big phrase that people talk about, but doing it's hard, right? Like there's a whole re-education and with these new tools there's a whole new skill set. If you think of AI and those tools, what pieces of your problem go to the optimal platform? And that's where people are thinking a quantum computer today or a quantum computer will solve everything. It'll be the general universal computer. It'll ask it a question. It will be your oracle, right?
Yeah.
It's like going to the carnival, the park, and what was it? What was that machine that tells you the fortunes?
Oh yeah. The film Big, wasn't it? Yeah. That's
right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
No, I completely agree with you. I think that is the challenge. But the reality is that if I take a look at mobility, and I've long been a believer that 2025 will be the tipping point of change for an S curve of change for the mobility world. So between 2025 and 2030, the runners and riders of the new mobility ecosystem will be decided. And so when you walk back from that position, you say, well, between now and 2025, you not only do you have to create a state of readiness, you need to know what customer experience models you want to be solving, but you've also got to be in a position where you're going to survive that S curve of change, because history says whoever is the disruptor that gets to the S curve in a good position doesn't necessarily exit the end of the S curve in an equally good position. And we can see that in the smartphone revolution that took place, and different players that were sitting in there from pole position that fell away during a very short space of time. So I think it's to me, it's kind of really interesting to get people to think about how close 2025 is, walk back to their reality today, and then it's about working out what I call the tangible digital steps. Because the problem is that everything can look like a moonshot, and moonshots are a bit of a risky play, especially if you've got an established business. You can't really start rolling the dice, but equally you can't stand still. You've got to be doing something. So tacking those steps onto the mega trends and the things that we've perhaps been talking about, looking at the things that are underlying the change program for the industry, and seeing if those things are happening in the time frames you expected. Because I'm a believer that directionally mobility is going to happen. There's no change in that direction. COVID has definitely changed some of the things we talked about, how quickly or how slightly deviated that direction might be. But more than anything, I'm a believer that it's like a river. We've had a storm, and that storm has swelled the river. And the direction of mobility is now an intensified journey. And that consciousness we talked about and the demand of the consumer, it's just going to put pressure on all the industries converging to make those moves sooner rather than later. So it's not going away. It's not like, well, now COVID's here, let's go back to the normal and stop thinking about these fanciful things. It really is a reality that needs to be addressed today.
Absolutely. And if you look back on technology in general, it goes in cycles, right? So there's cycles of development, of innovation, and then operational deployment. And to your point with this convergence, there's a lot of pieces together that have to be integrated. And think of, we all watch video. We're on our devices today using high definition video. And I remember I have a big video background, and early on you could make video look good. It was really small. Maybe it would like stutter. and people were like, that's it. Nobody's going to buy TVs, right? They're going to watch them all on their big computer screen. And, what happened was, well, not everybody had enough bandwidth, right? There wasn't enough CPU power. There wasn't enough storage. Storage was so expensive. So as those kind of technologies became more of a commodity and they became integrated, right? Yeah. Your iPhone today is like you doing 4K video, which is incredible. Yeah. So I think we have all this convergence of technologies happening in parallel. If you think of parallels between what happened, the transition from physical media to digital media to mobility today, it's just the same. It's really magical to see it all coming together, because all of these pieces, it takes so many brilliant people, companies to make all of this technology, and then to get it to work together. That's the challenge, but it's also like I was just saying, that magic when it happens.
Yeah, no, completely. Well, Jason, I really appreciate taking time to talk to me, and I've really enjoyed the conversation as always, and always find your insight worth listening to. So appreciate the time. Look forward to catching up again soon.
Likewise, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.